Okay, well, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here today. Also going to be at the one-to-one conference coming up tomorrow and Friday as well. So if anybody is there, feel free if you've got any questions to drop by. SilverOne's a company based mainly focusing on silver. That's not surprising based on the name, but we also have some interesting copper potential in the company's projects as well. Founded in 2016, and we've been moving forward with developing some of our assets. There we go. This is our flagship project called the past-producing Candelaria silver mine, located in Nevada, probably one of the best mining jurisdictions in the world. And you'll see two big open, well, you'll see in this photo, one big open pit, one big heap leach pad. There's actually two big open pits and two big heap leach pads. I'll let you peruse the forward-looking statement. Not only do we have the Candelaria project, we also have something called the Phoenix Silver Project, which is a high-grade opportunity in Arizona. Also has some excellent porphyry copper potential. I'll show you that. We have a third project, Cherokee. We're not focusing on that right now. We have our hands full on the first two projects. We did a financing just recently in June of this year, oversubscribed, 5.9 million. We've got just, based on our last financials, just around 4 to 5 million in the treasury left over, and we are drilling right now on the Phoenix Silver Project. Let's move forward, and I'm just going to skip this slide due to lack of time because I'm going to talk a little bit more detail about each of the three projects. There are some brochures that are around. If anybody wants a brochure, you can look at some of the details. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about silver. Why is it important? Well, here are some of the main uses of silver. And besides the classic uses of silver, which are in silverware and jewelry, not to mention coins and bars, but also we have the electronics, which is a really growing field, and we have the photovoltaics, which is solar panels. These are very important, not to mention the fact that the future of artificial intelligence is based on computing power, and silver is a major component in the construction of computers, cell phones, etc. So this could become very important. No stats are available on this just yet, but we'll see what comes out of that. Not to mention electric vehicles. Also, expected growth in the electric vehicle industry, despite the election of a certain president in the United States a couple of weeks ago, or about a week ago. But we do see continued growth in the electric vehicle and also in solar panels, particularly in China right now. So lots of uses of silver coming up. What are some of the factors that would affect the silver price? US dollar index. Sometimes it works against or for silver. What we're seeing recently is a big surge in the US dollar index since the election last week, but we're also seeing silver prices came off, but they're starting to rebound again back up close to $31 per ounce. Economic and political risk can factor into silver prices. Dow Jones right now zooming. Is that going to change? We'll see what the Fed does with respect to interest rates coming up. Supply demand. We're in a deficit on silver, and we have been for about 3 to 4 years, and we expect that to continue. Difficult jurisdictions getting new mines into production, new restrictions, and also the economic and political risk in certain jurisdictions. Nevada, as I said, is probably one of the best mining jurisdictions in the world. Inflation, it's not tamed yet, no matter what they say. Some of the new policies expected out of the U.S. administration could be inflationary, so wait and see what happens there. And the debt, 36 trillion and climbing, and Bitcoin is soaring right now. So I have here, it's off. Well, that's a little out of date, shall I say, on the last little bit. So carrying on, we do see silver actually outperforms gold in a precious metals bull market. There's some examples there. And let's just jump into the projects. As I said, we haven't got a lot of time to spend on this, but Candelaria, past-producing silver mine in the western part of Nevada, very well located right off the main highway that joins Reno to Las Vegas. It was an early producer, very high grade, averaged about 1,250 grams per ton silver between its discovery in 1864 and 1959. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they converted it to big open pit operations. Average grade was about 90 to 110 grams per ton silver. The last big operator was Kinross. All told, they produced about 68 million ounces of silver. They decided that in 1997, with the crash of silver prices down to about $2.50 per ounce, they touched on, but they stayed below $5, they decided to shut down the mine, and they started reclamation. They didn't complete it, and that's extremely important for us today regarding permitting. I'll talk about that. They sold it off to Silver Standard. Silver Standard did some drilling, outlined a new in-ground resource just down dip from the two big open pits. They did some studies, but silver prices were still under $5 per ounce, and they moved on to other projects. We approached them in 2017. They were rebranding their company, becoming SSR Mining, focusing on gold, and they were selling off a lot of their old silver properties. We focused on this one, entered into an agreement. It was all shares except for a $2.5 million reclamation bond we had to put on one of the big leach pads that had not reseeded. And we now, in 2023, put that bond up. We now have 100% with no royalties back to Silver Standard. So what do we get for that? Well, Silver Standard did that resource. It was a 43-101 resource, but it is now historic. We've done enough drilling to update that. That's an upcoming event for us in the not too distant future. 44 million ounces of silver at the measured and indicated, plus an additional 34.5 million ounces of silver at the inferred. On top of that, Kinross left a lot of silver in the old heap leach pads. They just turned off the tap in 97, 98. The big leach pad here that you see in this photograph, we drilled it, we did metallurgical sampling, estimated to contain about 13 million ounces of additional silver at an average grade of 42 grams per ton silver. Not bad for material that has already been mined, as it's just sitting on the surface, needs to be recrushed and reprocessed. The smaller leach pad, which is hidden in behind the hill, has another 15 million ounces of silver. Originally, when we got this property, we thought, let's try and put the leach pads back into operation as a first stage in the rehabilitation of the mine. Well, when we did it, silver prices were $13, $14, and our original metallurgy, the original recoveries out of the open pit were about 51%. And that seems to be about average for a lot of these silver oxide deposits. If we look at Coeur's Rochester mine to the north of Reno, they're getting about 50 to 55%. That's what the silver oxide deposits are about. When we did our metallurgy on this already half-spent heap leach pad, we were getting 21 to 29%. I'll come back to that figure in a little bit. Infrastructure-wise, we inherited a lot of infrastructure. Upper right corner, that's the main highway that joins Reno to Las Vegas. 2 miles of paved road past the two leach pads to the old open pits. Nothing's left of the old plant, but we do have a power line, and we pay our monthly power bills. We've got the down dip to the northeast resource outside the two big open pits that was outlined by Silver Standard. We've got 2 water wells, each capable of 500 to 700 gallons per minute. No water in Nevada, no mining, so we're very good at preserving our water rights. We did a lot of drilling. You'll see in this photograph a lot of yellow dots. That's historic drilling. That's all from Kinross and their predecessors at NERCO. We have all that information, which we want to combine with our drilling in the colored circles there, that we will use to update that historic resource. That's coming. We also did some metallurgical sampling. One thing we did, you'll see some of the holes there in black outlined and numbered. Those are metallurgical tests. And we actually improved the original Kinross recoveries, went from 51% up to 66% by grinding the material down to 2 millimeters and then doing column leach tests on cyanide testing. So we've quite significantly improved those recoveries. I'm not going to talk about this one. It was a little hard to read. If you blow that up or look at the brochure, you'll see some of the high grades that we're intercepting because there's high grade mineralization heading down dip to the northeast. Average grade of the deposit, open pit wise, was, as I said, 90 to about 110 grams per ton. But heading down dip, where we're getting into some mixed sulfide, we're getting up to 200 to 300 grams per ton, and we're convinced that it'll go into sulfide as we go further northeast, but we haven't drilled it yet. So essentially, the other thing about the recoveries is we ran into a metallurgical group called Extract, a group of ex-petroleum engineers and metallurgists who looked at removing heavy metals from petroleum products. Well, they spun out and they formed a new company called Extract. And they're focusing now on removing essentially precious metals from heap leach pads, tailings, etc. They joined forces with a big respected engineering group in the US called Bechtel, probably one of the biggest in the US, and they've developed new proprietary solutions. They said that they could improve the recoveries on our heap leach pads. We said, prove it. They tried it on leach pad number 1, where we had 21 to 29% recoveries. They ground it down to 2 millimeters. They did agitated leaching with their magic solutions, and they come up with 49%. That's a significant improvement. On top of that, by just doing a few minutes of additional milling, they were getting it up to 69% recoveries. So we've re-engaged them. They are now testing leach pad number 2 and the fresh oxide sulfide mineralization. We'll see whether they can continue to make those improvements. Those results are coming out in the not too distant future, after which we'll put up a resource update and then proceed to an economic study probably in the new year. So that's what's happening at Candelaria. And I'm just going to talk briefly, very briefly. This is a magnetometer, airborne magnetometer survey. And you can see the main structure between the purple to the north and the blue to the south. It hits the pits, gets offset, and then heads off more subtly to the east, where Hochschild was drilling a gold deposit. But over by the Georgine pit, we're finding something interesting. Some of the old workings around the adit, we didn't find silver oxide. We found copper sulfide in what looks like an altered porphyry. That guy there was averaging over 2.5% copper with good silver and gold credits. We've done wide-spaced IP with the mag, and we've done soil geochemistry. We've got some interesting targets and good copper oxide mineralization at Red Hill. So that's a future exploration component at Candelaria. I'm going to jump to Phoenix Silver. Interesting story. Globe is a huge porphyry copper producing area, one of the larger ones in the US. Some prospectors came to us. They said, we have a property at the very northeast end of this big porphyry copper belt and higher on the hillside, higher elevation. And they had gone up the hills with their metal detectors, and about a meter under the surface, they hauled out these silver vein fragments. The one in the middle, 417 pounds, that's just under 200 kilograms for the metric people in the audience, and estimated to contain about 70% pure silver. Very angular, very unabraded. We figure they can't have traveled very far from their source. We entered into agreement. We now have 100% interest in the project. There's the big porphyry copper belt. There's our property in red up in the northeast. Some old silver mines, McMorris and Buckeye, just to the northeast of us again. Just across the valley from us, Freeport-McMoran is actually processing copper. They've got a smelter there. Going further down, we've got Capstone at the Pinto Valley deposit processing copper. We've got the Carlotta KGHM. We've got the Resolution mine at the southern end of that belt that they are trying to permit. That's BHP and Rio Tinto. And further back up, closer to our property at the Ocelot property, it's just under the old original Dominion mine discovery that had high-grade base metals with silver and gold. That's copper, lead, zinc. Underneath that, BHP recently talked about intercepts at depth of over 250 meters of 0.6 to 0.7% copper. All that extends north up into underneath our property. Essentially, these are some of the silver fragments. We've collected over 250 of these from the property. That one there assayed about 46% pure silver. We are actually drilling it right now. We're looking at that 417 vein structure that heads over towards the old Mexican mine where they did produce native silver. And we've got a program underway, so stay tuned for that. This one here is an interesting slide in the sense that Freeport-McMoRan is just off the southwest or the lower left corner of this slide, and BHP is just about the center of the slide, just off the bottom there. Both of those project northwards onto our property, and in the southern area of our property at the lower elevations on the property, we're collecting multiple samples in breccia zones, veins, alteration zones, and we're getting many samples over 1% copper with good silver grades as well. Is there a porphyry copper potential on our property as well as the high-grade silver? Can't say for sure, but we've just completed a Z10 survey, an airborne electromagnetic survey that hopefully will outline some interesting alteration zone that could become drill targets for a potential porphyry system. So Phoenix Silver is really in a porphyry copper belt, but if we're higher up in elevation, perhaps we're getting the silver as a upper level expression of that porphyry system. We don't know yet, stay tuned. That's just some of the photos. There's the drill, there's another fellow, one of our geologists holding some copper samples. In the background, you'll see all of the workings of Freeport-McMoRan where they're producing copper. More copper mineralization. We have a third project. I'm just going to touch on it very briefly. Eastern Nevada. It's essentially a 12+ kilometer long vein system. We have 100% interest in this project as well. Good epithermal style textures at the Cherokee mine in the northern part of the property with good silver and copper values. And in the south, we get good silver and gold values. It was drilled in the 1980s. Big bullseye target in the southern part of the property there, and that was drilled for porphyry moly back in the 1980s. And we see these big vein systems shooting off it. Early stage exploration, we've got a lot of work to do there, but as I said, we're focusing on the other two projects. So what are we doing? What are the events that are coming up? Well, essentially we're doing metallurgical testing right now at Candelaria. Once we get those results back, we'll put together all the data, put out an updated resource to replace that historic resource, and then we'll put out probably in the new year an economic study on Candelaria. Again, maybe focusing on the heaps as a starter, but stay tuned. We're going to let our engineers do their work first before we make any definitive statements on that. Phoenix Silver Project, we're doing some drilling right now, but we also want to do some porphyry copper evaluation after we get all of the analysis done on that airborne Z10 survey. We might be able to produce some targets that we want to go after, maybe drill some porphyry copper there as well. Cherokee down the road, we're getting knocks on the door with respect to interest in Cherokee. Haven't done anything yet, but we'll see. So we're going to advance all three projects. Essentially, this is just some of the things that we've done. I'll let you look at the brochure if you're interested and read that in detail because of timing. This is our history since we formed the company in 2016. We kind of track the silver price up, down, up, down, up, down. And big shareholders, surprise, Eric Sprott is our largest shareholder. But we do have the Jupiter Fund here out of London as a major shareholder now. They're our second largest shareholder. Commodity Capital out of Switzerland. Several other funds are in our company as well. That's issued an outstanding. Treasury, that's a little high there. We have been spending on that drill program, so probably under 5 now. And average daily volume is close to 200,000 shares a day. So that's on the TSX and the OTC QX as well in the United States. So we do have some warrants coming due in January. They're not in the money yet, but let's see if we can get some results to change that. So that's really it. This is who we are, and you might recognize a couple of the names there. As I said, happy to chat with anybody afterwards, and that's really the end of the presentation, so thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Some truly spectacular.
Oh, I forgot. This is one of the silver samples. Anybody wants to have a look at it, I forgot to hold that up there, even though I was instructed to do so by my investor relations person back there, Gary Lindsay. Well, they were in the room sometime.